says.
You just need to talk in it. That's all I say.
Okay, and then just think of probing questions while I talk.
So the probing question is, after you saw the buyout, what was the biggest thing that was missing? I mean, what do people need to know
Right,
about what happened that isn't it just dollars and cents?
right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Here comes Andrea and Helen. They're going to goof on me, though.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Thinking. What really made this project work, although it sounds corny, is the people. And in the case of Northgate, I think that the people who were involved in the hiring process realized that we would have a lot of problems, and we knew that this was such a huge project that we would have to deal on a daily basis with large things to overcome. And so we consciously hired with an effort toward getting people that could work in a difficult process. And I think the ways in which we did that would be very helpful for other projects to know. And those are, for instance, in most cases when you hire a contractor, you do so through a bid process, and you're required to do it through to create a competitive bid process, and then you go with the lowest and most reasonable bidder. And the most reasonable is the I don't know how to explain it. That most reasonable portion of the restriction is sort of nebulous, and you don't know how to address that until the bids come back. If the bids, in most cases, people will bid a project, the bids come back, they get a low bid, and they're required to take that bid. If, in fact, that's not someone you want to work with, it's not your first choice of who you want to have on site, you're in trouble. If those people have a reputation for going to their attorneys very quickly, to not working out problems on site, to covering themselves at the expense of the owner, to charging you a great deal for change orders and making up for a low bid through high change orders, those are things that this project could not afford. And I think that most projects can try to get out of their system if they work at it. And we did that by pre-qualifying all the contractors, by getting the funders for this project to agree to a unique process that included pre-qualification. And what we did is we sent out an RFP to contractors in the area who might be interested in the work at Northgate. We got a response of about a dozen people. We weeded that down to about a half dozen people who were interested in the project, and we thought on paper had the qualifications we needed. Then we set up interviews with all of those groups, and from that group we found 4 contractors who we were willing to have work on site with us, and that was who we permitted to bid. So when we got our bids back, the only issue was money. We didn't have to argue for what constituted reasonable and not, for the different merits of different contractors. We worked all that out ahead of time, and then when we got the bids back, we went with the people who offered us the lowest bid. The contractors in the area, I think, really respected this process too, that we stood by it, and that they weren't wasting their time doing a bid with the possibility of being asked not being offered a contract because of some issues other than the cost of the work. With our architect, we talked to a lot of people in the area and just did a lot of research up front about the different personalities of people, as well as their skills, and most importantly, the size of work that they could handle. We knew this would be a big project, and that they had better be ready to parcel work out to a lot of different people.
So let me stop you for a second.
Yeah.
After all is said and done, because we're not going to, I mean, you're explaining all this, but just
I know you're going to cut.
what the answer, we need 2 things, and one was the end statement, and one is the middle statement. I can't remember what the middle statement was. What we were going to put in that section to sort of set this up before the.
I was going to get to that about morale on site, kind of thing.
Is that what was in the beginning?
I think that, I think that was both places. We wanted definitely at the
I'll say something more succinct, first of all, about the contractor and the architect.
It had to do, everybody had to be able to
Work together. Right,
But in the end.
But then you also wanted something really upbeat about.
right, right. Those are the 3 things. One was on the site as a whole, and one was on the 3 parties, the contractor, architect, and owner. So I'll try to get at that more succinctly. When we chose an architect, I knew at that time that I would be working with this person for probably more than 40 hours a week for 3 years. And I kind of likened it to being married to whoever I hired. Not only should this person have the skills and have a firm big enough to handle all the work we had to do, but it had to be someone that I really felt I could work with and whose personality and work style complemented mine. That had a lot to do with our decision in choosing Northern Architects. We really balance each other. My job as an owner, some people would consider this as an owner's representative. A lot of my duties end up being those of that would typically be an architect's, and I knew that going in when we interviewed for architects, and so we ended up choosing someone who's a real detail person. I'm not a detail person. I'm the big idea person, and we needed someone who could implement those big ideas and tie it together. And we chose a contractor who had a great reputation for ethics and for treating their clients fairly. We knew going into this process we would have a lot of problems and a lot of challenges. We were working around 1,500 people in occupied housing. To my knowledge, it hadn't been done, or I certainly hadn't done it before. I had no experience with it, and I felt we had no choice but to create a team that had a great reputation for working together. To get an architect who's the kind of person that doesn't protect themselves with memos, create some designs for you, and then just throw up their hands when the contractors can't implement them on site. And we chose a contractor who would work with us, who wouldn't take advantage of us on change orders, who would understand the nature of this work. For instance, when we interviewed people, we veered away from people who use the word attack a lot. A lot of contractors see that as impressing owners, and it does, that they're going to take charge and go plowing through here. In our case, it was different. We wanted to retain control of this project. We prepared the work schedules for them. We were very intimately involved in how the work was carried out. And we interviewed contractors up front to find out the how they would do it, how they would approach the work. It's not to say the money was secondary, but we really needed for people to have a clear vision of what it would be like to work around all these people and what things they should be concerned with. If we heard answers like, we're concerned about theft, we're concerned about fraternization between the workers and the employees, we're concerned about heavy equipment around small children, that's the kind of thinking we want people to have. If they don't think that way, you can't make them. So those are the kind of qualities we looked for, and I think it really served us well in the long run.
So after all was said and done, you had this team. What do you think, what's the unquantifiable, and what's the part of the job that you really need to pull it off?
I think as far as, I think that, okay, the team is essential, that you need an owner's representative, or just an owner, an architect, and a contractor who can work well together. And to me, one of the phrases that came up a lot is that we won't do first strike. That a lot of people are very quick to argue over stuff monetarily, to pull in attorneys and just say no very quickly. They would rather be part of a problem than part of a solution. And that's the unquantifiable here, that we never had anybody who would back away from the table. We never had anybody in our process who wouldn't give it their best. And everyone was very upfront, and we would demand that from each other at all times, and we always got it. So that's the unquantifiable as far as the three people go, the three different groups. But then I want to talk about the morale on site. The unique outcome of the work at Northgate was our respect for the crews and for the kind of morale that was built up here at Northgate. Wright and Morrissey Construction really tried to enforce the spirit as opposed to the letter of the law of women in the trades. And by doing so, we didn't have a token representation of women here. We had a lot of women working on this project. And I think it's testimony to the fact that you can't put token numbers of people someplace and have them be happy and fit in. They're always going to be scrutinized. They'll always be held to different standards. They'll be mistreated. And it just doesn't work out. In our case, with so many women on the job, I think it was great for the work at Northgate because we have occupied housing with a lot of single moms and a lot of children. And I think that just having a more balanced, sexually balanced crew just takes on the crews take on a different tone. They're more of a family attitude, more like brothers and sisters working together than other crews. When I go to other sites, I liken it to an ongoing deer camp. If it's all men, it just takes on a slightly different tone than crews that are mixed. And now I want to talk about the morale thing.
And what in effect carries you through projects in this book?
These big questions that are hard to answer.
Because they're real. We have like all this.
I know you do. I'm trying to think of something.
So I mean, in a
Yeah, okay, I got one.
But put the question in the answer.
Yes, I will. I think that the two things that really carry you through a project like this on all levels are tenacity and a good attitude. The tenacity comes in sticking with the problem and writing it through and working it out and not giving up and not blaming others, not pointing fingers and not crying foul, but making everybody sit around the same table and work things out. And we did that every day for 2 years. And some of us are tired of the subjects we worked out, but we stuck with it, and we still will. The second thing is the attitude toward the work, and that's something that's very hard to quantify. It's something it's hard to require of a contractor, certainly, to make sure that their crews have a good attitude. And I think that it comes from trickle down. If the supervisors treat their people well, the project manager treats the supervisor well, the owner treats the project manager well, ultimately you'll have happy workers on the site. And in our case, we came to like that very quickly, and then we came to enforce it. When we would have new subcontractors come on who were not part of our little Northgate family, we would pull them into our way of behavior very quickly, or they'd be out of here. And that would include their treatment of each other, their treatment of their supervisors, their treatment of the residents, foul language or behavior. And as the project manager put it, at Northgate, to be in with the in crowd, you had to be really nice. And on some jobs, you'll see a very loud minority, and others feel they have to join along in being, I don't know, rude and very aggressive and living up to some stereotype they have of construction workers. And here, it was quite the opposite. Those people were taken to task pretty quickly, and they would stop that behavior, and they would really enjoy their work. As soon as they let that go, they would enjoy their work. You'd see people up on the roof showing pictures of their babies to each other all the time. There was just a mutual respect for everybody involved. I know, for instance, we had walkie-talkies, and if somebody new would get a walkie, we had 20 walkie-talkies on site. People who were carrying the walkie-talkies were inside apartments. These walkie-talkies could be heard by residents, by children, and if anyone ever said anything that was inappropriate in the walkie-talkie, it would be taken away from them right away. And I wouldn't have to enforce that. That was done by the contractor. So, I don't know what else I can say about morale. Okay. I'd like to kill our architect right now, and I'd like to hang up the contractor. Yeah, I was in the middle of this meeting just wanting to kill everyone. I thought, I have to go talk about how great we are today. Yeah, those days.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think you had a contractor yet. Or is this your old
These
contractor?
are old contractors. These are old problems.
Oh. Oh, that makes it even worse.
Oh, look how nice it looks.
Very pretty.